give a fuck? Why do I give a fuck? Why do I try so hard? Why do I care so much?
Welcome to Why Do I Give a Fuck? A cross-cultural conversation between myself, Deanne Tate,
and Johanna Thompson. In these times of great struggle and possible shift, we ask ourselves,
why do we give a fuck about any of it? How does the lens we see the world through impact what we see?
And what do we do about it?
Hey, hey, hey. How are you? Let's give ourselves an applause. You made it.
There's a new thing that is an applause way that I'm seeing that seems to be trending, but I understand what it is, but this is another way to do it. What are we applauding today? Yeah, that's a nice one. What are we applauding today?
How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited for us to be coming to all of our listeners and viewers on this new platform of StreamYard. So we've shifted over a little bit because Deanne is being in her masterful post-production work and is trying to upgrade us coming on to our 66th episode of our podcast. So
oh my
God,
God,
excited to try this new platform, and I'm hoping that all of you will bear with us as we play around with it.
Yeah, it's a learning curve, right? And so I think we're going to be playing around with this in the coming weeks, but this is our first official recording in this new gig. So this new setup. So I'm excited and yeah, bear with us if there are any glitches in the matrix, but I think we'll probably be all right. So, so we just wanted to say to all of our listeners, for those of you who might be listening on any of our different audio platforms, that we are on YouTube, and we would love for you to come over and check us out on YouTube. So you'll see in the upper banner, if you're watching us on YouTube, all of our TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube handles. We want people to come and find us and leave comments and let us know if something we said touched you or moved you or pissed you off or any of the above. We want to hear from everybody. So looking to try to get a little more interaction with our listeners. So
engagement.
Yeah.
That's the key word. So just engage with us and join this conversation with us, because we're having the conversation amongst ourselves, but it is a cross-cultural conversation. So it's such a good opportunity for us to hear from our listeners or anyone that you pass our information on to. We're excited to engage with you, and we'll try to engage back as best we can.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I was giving a fuck about today and wanted to talk about, and we were chatting a little bit as we were leading in, is the Globid Sumud Flotilla, which is making its way to Gaza. And for those of you who don't know about this, because Western media has not been covering it, there is the 39th flotilla that is trying to make its way to Gaza in Palestine. And I can't believe it's the 39th. This has been going on for many, many, many years. And but this is the first one that is not just one boat. So there are 44 boats in this flotilla, representing over 50 countries, I believe. And so it's definitely the heftiest flotilla that they've tried so far. Have you heard about, has there been any coverage about it where you are in Jamaica?
No, but you're asking me, and I'm not on the news.
Oh, that's true.
I only have like the internet apps,
right,
Netflix, things like that. So
right. Yeah. Is anybody talking about it? Have you had conversation with anybody?
So I have a guest who's here, a friend from the U.S. coming actually from Louisiana, New Orleans. And everywhere that she has been out and said that she's from the U.S., there has been specific comments about, as I've always said on our episodes, is that folks are talking about how the U.S. is crazy. Be careful. Don't let the administration get you down. So it's mostly what people are talking about is just how bananas and crazy the U.S. is, which is really interesting because if we're talking about humanitarian aid efforts and we're talking about something like the flotilla, traditionally humanitarian aid from the U.S. And traditionally across the world would come from government agencies being the instigator. But what we're seeing in the US is that a lot of private organizations and influencers have to be the people who are stepping up into that position to provide the support and the care for humanitarian efforts in the way that we're used to hearing and seeing. And so I wanted to speak to and have people understand what humanitarian efforts look like. When you're thinking about that, Deanne, what are some of the ways that you've seen that demonstrated across the world that matters to you besides this flotilla?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, in the past, well, I guess since Trump came into the administration, we've definitely seen a decrease in humanitarian aid that the U.S. is sending. Organizations or departments like the USAID, for example, being shut down. Speaking of shutdowns, our entire government is in a shutdown right now as of midnight last night.
You see, this is what I'm talking about. That might have been what someone was saying earlier when there was just like, your government is going crazy. So I didn't even know that. So there was a shutdown in the U.S. government.
Yeah, midnight last night. Midnight last night. They could not reach an agreement on a budget, which, the government has to do this budget situation every year. And I don't even know, it's been well over a decade, maybe even 2 decades since we've had a balanced budget in this country.
Yeah, so it's been longer than that, I believe.
Let me see. I'm going to ask.
Let's ask Google.
I'm trying to de-Google my life, so I'm trying not to ask Google anything anymore.
Okay.
But typically when the government is arguing about this and they can't come to a decision about a budget because the Senate and the House can't agree, or the Congress and the president can't agree, they usually put something into place called a continuing resolution, which basically, and those of you who listen to Western media have heard this phrase before, kick the can down the road until a later time. So that means maybe in 6 more months, they'll revisit the situation. And last night, they did not even pass a continuing resolution. And so as of right now, as we're speaking, as we're recording this, our government, the U.S. government, is no longer functioning, which means that people are not going to be getting their Social Security checks, and people are not going to get access to their SNAP benefits, such as it is at this point, because it's been so severely cut. And so when you talk about, we were talking about international funding and foreign aid, that has been greatly scaled back, if not completely eliminated, in so many different ways since this current administration has come into office. And so I know we're going to look at a website in a little bit that shows the international aid and the different countries and how much we give to other countries for certain topics or certain headers. But that has been so greatly reduced. I think you're going to show us at one point that in 2025 it looks like there's just nothing, because there's not. We're not giving anything out anymore.
So I did want to come back and answer the question. The last time that we had a fiscally balanced budget was in 2001 at the end of the Clinton administration. So it's been a very, very long time. And then I'm looking at this data because I want to make sure that we're doing this properly. I'm looking at this fiscal data from the U.S. Treasury.gov. Okay. And right now we're in a deficit because we've spent 1.97 trillion more than we collected in 2025. And so it's been a very long time. In the last 50 years, they're saying that we've had a surplus in the U.S. budget only 4 times since 2001. So we don't know how to balance our money too well. And we're also, to your point, where we are making appropriations and shifting, our values are shifting tremendously with this administration, which is really important to be thinking about also. Like, where do we want to have our focus as as U.S. citizens, and folks that are participating in the global economy? How are we supporting with the amount of surplus that we do have, even though we're in a deficit within our own fiscal government? How are we utilizing and spending and appropriating our dollars to support the global economy and global relations? Yeah.
Well, so getting back to, what you asked about the flotilla, or you asked about what other areas that I'm, caring about or paying attention to. And I don't have a long list. I am
Yeah.
very focused on the flotilla right now, but in Gaza and stopping the forced famine and the starvation and the killing that's happening over there. But I know that the rolling back of the funding that this country has done in terms of its foreign, I think when you and I talked about the State of the Union, or the first State of the Union that Trump gave, he gave this whole he gave this long list of what he considered to be
Extra dollars thrown away.
Foreign aid that the U.S. was giving to other countries. And I remember, if I remember correctly, most of them were to countries on the continent,
Yes.
which is not surprising to anyone who might be paying attention. But yeah, so I am imagining that there are a lot of countries out there that have been greatly impacted by the withdrawal of foreign aid from the U.S. to their governments. I just don't have that information to know what that direct impact has been.
Yeah. I mean, well, we know that if we're thinking about being on U.S. territory, and we're thinking about what government funding, grants, and aid, and all of the money that has been removed from supporting NGOs that are operating outside of U.S. territory, and then for nonprofit organizations that are operating on U.S. territory, the lack of funding that is being available means that there's less services for social needs that are happening in the United States. And so when there's less service provision in the United States, you're going to have an increase in stressors. You're going to have an increase in crime. Those are the things that happen because people are not having their needs met in the way that they need to have them met, which also is a part of the plan, because then the more people are acting outside of like what's legal to have their survival and their needs met, and then doing what is now criminalized, they are going to then be round up and put in these new cop cities. They're going to be arrested. They're going to be arraigned. They're going to be system impacted in a different way than we've seen traditionally, because there's less service provision, because there's less funding going out to those organizations who are doing our social services.
Yeah.
So it sounds bleak. And as we're saying these things, it's like, oh, yeah. But even in still and all that, like, right, the U.S. spirit is that people are going to see and recognize that there are folks that are in much dire situations than what's happening on U.S. territory. So we are hearing about the defunding and the lack of social services, but we know that people are not having the same experience as what's going on in Gaza, Congo, Myanmar, all of these places where folks are actually don't have access to food, don't have access to healthcare, don't have access to education, don't have access to nutrition and resources to their skilled professionals to make sure that they can get all of the resources that they need. So we're seeing this kind of global trend of a diminishing of resources in a significant way. But I wanted to turn it back to you, because you've been following the flotillas and you've been following where they are right now and like what it actually looks like on the ground or in the water at this moment.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and just add this image. So what we're looking at right now, for those who might be listening, is a live stream of the cameras from each of the boats on the flotilla, or not all of them, because there are a lot more boats than can fit in this screen. And you'll notice that there are a couple of screens that are either black, or it says that the video feed's been lost. And so that often happens, or has been happening, when the Israeli boats, which they were saying that just recently, as of maybe 12 hours ago, they started to see unidentified boats circling and coming closer to their area. And so one of the things that the Israeli interceptors do is, when they get closer to the flotilla, they jam their comms. So that's going to result in them not being able to communicate boat to boat on their radios, and oftentimes their cameras will go down. So what you're looking at, if you're watching us on YouTube, is you're seeing different feeds from different boats, but then some of them are actually gone. But you can see the people on their on the deck of their boats. They are wearing, looks like they all have their life vests on. I did, as we were getting prepared to come on here with the two of us, Jay, I was listening to the feed and I heard an announcement come over one of the boats that sounded like it was coming from the Israelis saying, you are, they tend to come on with their announcements saying you're committing some sort of terrorist act in international, prepare to be boarded, prepare to be, my word would be assaulted, but that's not a word that they're going to use. And so I did hear that at one point when I had it on in the background and I was getting ready for us to meet together. So I think they're all preparing for that. If I am kind of guessing by the stance that everyone's in, everybody's up on deck. They've all got their life vests on, and probably they're singing some songs or just, trying to help each other stay calm. I've been watching their different posts. I follow a lot of them on social media. And in fact, I'm going to put a banner up right now that has some of the Instagram profiles that I've been following in case anybody wants to follow them. If you don't already, follow them on Instagram. And their spirits have been pretty high, but they've been nervous the closer they got to this, what they called the red zone, which was, I think, beginning an area where other flotillas have been intercepted and taken over by the Israelis. They were getting closer and closer to that overnight, and they are now in that zone. But here's what I want to say to everybody that's listening. And I know that this particular podcast is going to drop next week. And so I don't know where they're going to be at that point, but we need to be paying attention. We need to be amplifying their voices, amplifying what's going on, calling our elected representatives in the Senate and in the House, and letting them know that it's important to us for them to care about what happens. There are USians on these boats, several USians. There's one boat in particular that is dedicated, that has nothing but veterans on it. And that veteran boat was created and was put together specifically to, number one, show the importance that veterans believe it's important to break the siege on Gaza and to make sure that the people of Gaza get access to food and safety and stop getting killed and stop dying of forcible starvation. But also, too, because they can lend what they know about being in a war zone, about being in a conflict area to this humanitarian, strictly humanitarian. There are no weapons on any of these boats. They've only got baby formula and diapers and medical supplies and things of that nature. They're not carrying anything that could be used to wage war. But the knowledge that the veterans have on the veterans boat can be really helpful for the flotilla in informing them about tactics. And I think they've been really helpful. Greg Stoker is one of the most vocal voices on that veterans boat. And he's a former special forces veteran himself. So
excellent. Can I jump in for a section?
Yeah.
I really want to contextualize like why this is important for us to also be looking at this from the different places that we sit. One, it's 11:08 at night.
Yeah.
So right now in the U.S. on the East Coast, it's 4:00 where I am Central. It's 3:00.
7 hours ahead.
So, yeah, but in Gaza, we're at 11:08 at night. So just think about your body. Just take a moment and think about your body. We know the sun has gone down. We know that we're exhausted. This is the time that IDF is deciding that they're going to go and approach the boats when people are exhausted. It's not the daytime. They're getting into their comfort. So there is a strategy and a tactic with that. Oh, yeah. I also want to really talk about. We're talking about a strategy and a tactic with people who are doing humanitarian aid. And just to be clear, we hear the terms of humanitarian aid, but to be clear about the understanding of what humanitarian aid actually is. It's supposed to be short-term assistance to people in need due to natural disasters, conflict, and we know that this is a war and a major conflict that has lasted for a significant amount of time over in Palestine. Famines, other crises, anything that's like a primary issue for people and their safety and their health. The purposefulness of the humanitarian aid is to save lives for folks, to maintain humanitarian dignity and care and concern. So we're not talking about folks that are going in with any other purposefulness other than to respond to the emergency of what is happening in Palestine right now, in Gaza, on all of the places that are being bombed on the left bank and all of the places. I'm saying all of the right names because I know that the whole entire area is obliterated and people are being and continue to be moved and terrorized on a daily basis. We're trying to make sure that folks have food and shelter and care. Like to your point, just something like baby formula, where mothers can't do their own breastfeeding of their children because they're moving. They don't have any type of nourishment themselves because they're being moved all over the place. We're talking about really dire experiences that people are having, and folks that are coming in with their goodness, not so much supported through our U.S. government, but on their own, to be able to create some human dignity for people who are experiencing extreme conditions in their lives right now.
Yes, absolutely. And the other thing that I will add to that list of intentions for this flotilla is to create a humanitarian corridor. So we know, if we've been watching anything about what's going on in Gaza, that the Gaza Strip is this very tiny space of land that is on the coast of Palestine. And everything to the right of it, to the east of it, is all Israel. That's all IOF. That's all, inaccessible for them. They are not able to go. They have been going into the ocean to fish, and the IOF has bombed them and has killed them fishing in the water. So they're not allowed to go into the sea. And that's one of the things that this flotilla wants to try to do, not only to break the siege, which is to successfully get to the coast of Gaza, but also to create a humanitarian corridor. That's why it's so important that there are so many boats. In the past flotillas, it's been one boat or maybe two boats at the most. I don't know that for sure, but I think the most they've had before has been two boats. 44 boats could create a significant space for other countries to bring aid in and to get through that corridor that they established. There were 4 countries that were helping. There was Italy had sent a naval ship to support the flotilla. Greece had sent a naval ship and were protecting them when they were in the waters off of Greece. Spain had sent a naval ship to protect them, and Turkey. Turkey also sent drones, which was really helpful because the drones were flying above the flotilla and kind of policing and making sure that they knew what was happening to the boats, because the comms can be cut at any moment and then the boats can't ask for help. So right. I think the Turkey drones were really helpful. I want to say out loud, though, that most of those countries have pulled those ships and that support out. They stayed with the flotilla until they got into the hot zone, and then all of those naval support went away. So,
do you know that what we're calling the actual hot zone? Like, because I'm looking at what the jurisdiction of a country is into international waters, because
12 miles.
These are not owned, but it's like 12 nautical miles is what they're saying.
12 nautical miles off of any landmass is where you hit international waters. So right now,
the contiguous zone is international
12. Waters.
Yeah. Sorry. So anywhere basically between 24 and land, 12. The 12 nautical miles from the land is where you can enforce the law. And then there's an additional 12 beyond that. And I'm just looking this up. There's an additional called the contiguous zone of an additional 12 nautical miles where people can start to say, hey, you're coming into where we have jurisdiction. Because my understanding, and the reason why I wanted to point that out, my understanding is that nobody owns the seas.
No, they don't.
At all. So people shouldn't own the land either if we really want to talk about it, but nobody owns the seas at this point in time. But this is how they're able to make the maneuvers that they're making, because that is like the understanding that you have this kind of 12 off the land.
And they haven't cared that it's international waters. This is part of the problem. All of the previous flotillas were intercepted before, while the boats were still in international waters. So all of the interceptions that the IOF have done previous, and I call them IOF because they're the offensive forces. They're not the defensive forces in my mind. So when I say IOF, I mean Israeli offensive forces. All of the interceptions that they've done previously have all been in international waters, which is against international law, which is a war crime. So just to give people context, if they haven't been following this and haven't heard that part. And so when we say that this flotilla is in the red zone, they are not yet within 12 miles of Gaza. They are in international waters right now, but it's considered the red zone because they are now in the space where the IOF has intercepted other flotillas and has broken international law by doing so. So, yeah, it's really. I think the attention that this flotilla has gotten, the amount. I mean, Nelson Mandela's grandson. Let's just talk about some of the humans that are on this flotilla that have raised the awareness in the world about this flotilla. Nelson Mandela's grandson is on this flotilla. Greta Thunberg, who is the teenage environmentalist that was on.
Teenage still?
She is. I think she is still a teenager. Yeah, okay. I think she's 17. I think.
Oh, okay.
She is on this flotilla and has been on the past two that went out. Maybe she was on the Madeleine. I don't think she was on the last one that went out. But anyway. Greg Stoker from the U.S. Who else is on this flotilla? Susan Sarandon is on it. She's an actress from the U.S. And is in a big humanitarian. So a lot of what I would say bigger celebrity names chose to be on this flotilla. There are nurses, there are doctors, there are artists, there are singers, there are personalities from countries all over the world. There are there were going to be, I believe I heard that one of the UK MPs, which is a minister of parliament, wanted to be on the flotilla, and the government told her that she couldn't go. So she is not on the flotilla as an elected official, but these are the folks that are on here, and it's intentional so that they can raise the profile of the flotilla, because the higher the profile, the less maybe the less the IOF maybe feels like they can intercept and cause harm to the people on this flotilla, because the world is watching, and their their reputation, as it were, across the world is rapidly changing. Not rapid enough, not fast enough for people that have been watching this a lot longer than me, but they are changing. In fact, the World Soccer Federation is finally discussing whether or not to kick the Israeli team out of FIFA. So we're getting closer, but that's one of the reasons why this flotilla is so important in this moment, not just for the lives it could possibly save in Gaza, but for the global shift that we might have in the world's
that we are having.
Yeah. Well, I'm hopeful. It makes me nervous because I never trust, because if we stop talking about it, then that's when people that are offending others and oppressing others go back to
doing that.
What they
consistently.
So,
and also to contextualize some more is that when we're talking about kind of our federal aid and our international aid, and we're talking about our government being shut down right now because they haven't been able to, reconcile this budget. The foreign aid budget has always been less than 1%, or like maybe a little bit more, maybe 1.2, but it has not gone above a 1%, 1.23% of our entire federal budget. So that's like a small amount of money that the United States is spending on foreign aid, 64 billion around approximately. And again, with this administration, it does shift. I did want to pull up how it is that we do kind of appropriate some of our foreign assistance.
Yeah,
And so I think this is like really fascinating looking at this site here, which is a foreignassistance.gov. This is a U.S. Government agency that is tracking this information. And so in 2025, you can see here that the obligations that the U.S. Is appropriating, most of it internationally is going to government and civil society, to HIV and AIDS work, because that's still very prevalent. People need to be making sure that they're taking tests and checking and being protective with their statuses, operating expenses, emergency response, and unallocated and unspecified money. And those are like the largest dollar amounts that are going to international foreign aid. In 2024, with a different administration, I'm hoping that this is loading quickly, there was $28 billion that went to conflict, peace, and security. So really stabilizing other countries outside of the United States, emergency response, government and civil society, and then HIV and AIDS, those being the top 4 things. And then I want to go to 2023 and look at where we were focusing our appropriated US dollars. And I think that this is fascinating. Again, we were spending $41 billion on conflict, peace, and security, government and civil society, emergency response, and HIV and AIDS. So just to kind of contextualize, when there is US citizens that are coming together to use their own resources and own funds to create flotillas to go into an area, it's because you see the significant shift in the priorities with the administration and where they're appropriating dollars to support like kind of our global relations all together. And I really find it fascinating that $5 billion is going to government and civil society as we're watching U.S. government and civil society be eroded and democracy being tripled. So it's very interesting to see the U.S. moving in this way that it is moving. And if people want to check that resource, I'm also going to put that up as I'm playing with our
new toys.
New toys. Yes.
So yeah, it is astounding to think that, and you know, Trump has actually been vocal about this. We've heard him say on the rare times that he does talk about things that are maybe a little bit more specific to how the government should run. He's talked about intentionally pulling back all of this foreign aid and then dumping. In fact, this week he gave a horrible speech. Apparently, that's the word that I'm hearing the most in descriptor of it, to generals, to military generals, where he talked about how they were going to be on the streets of the bigger cities to with full carte blanche to do whatever they want to control and suppress the people across our country. And he talked about how the money is going to influx into these systems and that they were going to get all of this money. He was talking to these generals, how they were going to get all of this money so that they could go into the cities and terrorize the USians that live in those respective cities. And so he's been transparent in his focus on pulling back all of this. But I find it so interesting on that website that you shared, how they talk about peace. And you and I have talked about this, about like what is, so when we're looking at those categories and I'm looking at the titles of those categories, I'm thinking it's through the lens of the US and how the US government are the ones that made up those categories. And so I'm like, what do they think is actually peace? What do they think is civil society? What do they think? I mean, I want to do a deep dive into what those definitions are, because, you know, we know that it's a very, it has a very specific narrative, the US does, for what these words mean. And my guess would be that those words don't mean the same thing to the rest of the world. So to me, that makes it sus right off the rip in terms of of what they consider to be peace and civil society that they're going to give to another country to help them when we're the ones that were falling apart. So.
Right. But we also must hold and maintain the narrative that we're not falling apart, right? That we still are the great model of how to exist in the world, as folks are looking at us as the great model of how not to exist in the world. We're gonna
they're losing that. We're losing that narrative, though.
No, that's what I'm saying. As the rest of the world are looking at us as the model not to be in the world. And we're seeing that. We're seeing how our values are shifting, and you always can find out how your value is shifting by following the dollars, following the money, because that's where people put their energy and focus in.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
This is what I give an F about.
Yeah, I think we both do. And thank you for the conversation. And I want to encourage everybody to make sure that you follow us on all of the platforms that we are independently on, but also follow the Global Samud Flotilla. Samud means resilience. It means steadfastness in Arabic. And I know that they need everybody's prayers for safety and protection. And we got to keep our eyes on them and make sure that if you live in the U.S., that our electeds, but even all around the world, that our electeds are supporting them and are going to go protect, because there are a lot of world citizens on these boats. So thank you, my friend, very much.
Let's roll with a little human dignity out there. Some humanitarian effort is just about holding our human dignity in the way that we need to.
Yes.
All right. Blessings.
Talk to you soon.
Bless.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, as you move throughout your day, continue to ask yourself,
Why Do I Give a Fuck is produced in collaboration with Johanna and Deanne. Music by Norwegian musician Water. See you next time.